I swear up and down that this story, as much as it sounds like it's a made-up, run-of-the-mill scary doll story, it is 100% true and still terrifies me. When I was a kid, I would spend a lot of time in Texas with my brother and stepmom, mainly just my brother and stepmom because my dad was in the military, and would frequently go on long trips leaving us alone in whatever house that we happened to be living at the time. When I was about 5, we moved to a very large, old Victorian house. It had 3 stories, not including the attic and the basement, lots of rooms, and as a little kid I found it was very fun to explore. In the attic, there was a ton of old junk that the owner of the house was storing while we were renting it, including a huge collection of beautiful, handcrafted porcelain dolls. There were hundreds of them lined up neatly on the back wall in a glass case, standing on their little stands like an army ready for command, and as a little girl who loved ribbons and bows and anything girly, I was entranced. One doll in particular stood out to me. It had beautiful red hair. It was a green-eyed doll in a blue silk dress with a matching ribbon. I begged my dad to let me play with her. I felt like I needed to hold and love her and have tea parties with her. He of course refused, saying that the dolls were worth more than I could imagine and that he wanted his deposit back when we moved. He kept the door locked for good measure after catching me more than once staring in awe at the doll. A month went by and I had all but forgotten about her, choosing to simply explore the house and play in my basement room with my Barbies. That is until one day when I came home from dropping my dad off at the base and found the red-haired doll sitting on my bed. I was ecstatic, thinking that my dad had given me the doll and left it as a surprise, so I proceeded to play with the doll every second of every day until my dad came home. As soon as my dad saw the doll, he flipped out and yelled at me, spanked me, and took the doll away to lock back up in the basement, and only got more aggravated when he discovered that the attic door was still locked, and he was the only one to have the key. He couldn't figure out how I could have possibly picked the lock and repicked the lock to lock it back. His solution was that I had somehow convinced my brother to do it for me. Another month went by and my dad installed another lock on the attic, warning me and my brother what would happen if he found out that we had been in there again while he was gone. That very night, when we returned home, the doll sat on my bed again, leaving me wary of its presence. Something that had once made me so happy now made me cautious and anxious. I told my stepmom, who immediately became angry and slapped me, and then my brother, and tried to return the doll, only to find the attic door, once again, locked. She tore the house apart trying to find the keys that she was positive we had hidden until giving up and locking the doll in her room. The night my dad came home, I was terrified. He wouldn't speak to me or my brother at all. He only gave a short speech about how we needed to go to our rooms and not come out. The next trip he made, we didn't see him off to the base. We sat in our rooms and had a quiet evening alone. I spent the night sulking and trying to figure out how the doll had gotten back into my room. Later, after I had fallen asleep, I heard soft music box sounds that slowly woke me up. I felt something near my feet, and thinking it was my cat curled up, I reached down, only to find, instead of fur, a handful of hair. I turned on my light and screamed. What looked like every doll from the attic was in my room. They were sitting at my tea table on my dollhouse and positioned in standing position on my bed and in various parts of my room. My door slammed open, and my dad appeared in the doorway where he had apparently been waiting for me to head to the attic to claim a doll. He took one look at them, grabbed me, and ran out of the house, dragging my brother and stepmom along with us. He refuses to speak of them to this day. The most important part of the story is the backstory of the red-haired doll. Apparently, the original builder and owner of the house had a daughter who died when she was about 8, and it was customary to make a doll of their likeness made out of their real hair and dressed in the same clothes that the child had worn. I think it was that little girl, because I have never felt like it was dangerous to play with the doll. I just felt like she was lonely and wanted to make a friend. I'll just start with some history on the doll. Was told this by the previous owner. She was bought in Monroe, Connecticut, about 30-ish minutes away from the Warrens Occult Museum at a second-hand store. The owner who bought it felt like something was wrong with it and would often wake up with scratches and have nightmares every night. So she gave it to a friend to sell it on eBay, the man I purchased it from. The man selling it had a few stories, like one for instance where he had family coming over, so he hides the doll in an upstairs closet so his niece doesn't see it. The family slept downstairs, and the niece woke up at 3 a.m. crying from a nightmare, and she described the doll he had upstairs. But she never went upstairs and had never seen the doll in person, didn't even know it was there. After that experience, he wanted to sell the doll and didn't feel safe with it, so he put it in a storage unit. The company he was using called him, asking for him to come and open the unit for them to prove that there was no animal or person in there, as the security guard had heard banging and movement in the storage locker at night. I am very interested in the paranormal, so I have a collection of Ouija boards, a haunted music box, and an exorcism kit from the 70s, so I decided to purchase this doll. When it first arrived, I took it out of the box, and all 4 of my dogs started growling very, very aggressively and moving backward away from the doll to clarify my dogs love everyone. If a stranger broke into my house to rob us, they would greet him with wagging tails and licks. This behavior was very odd for them. As I said earlier, I have an exorcism kit, and with this kit there's a cross that is almost locked in place with 2 pieces of metal. And around 30 minutes after removing the doll from the box, I heard a noise from upstairs. I went up to investigate, and it was the cross. The cross had been removed from the kit, and had fallen off of my shelf and onto the floor. I was the only one home, and all the dogs were downstairs with me, and my room door was closed. Ever since this experience, my family has been scared of the doll, so I put the doll back into the box, and sealed it with salt, and put it in the garage of my old house. I moved out with my girlfriend, and my family still lives there. I unfortunately forgot about it as I was packing in a hurry. I forgot to get stuff in the garage. After I moved, my mother moved into her now ex-boyfriend's house, and she put the doll in a shed. Not every night, but a lot of times throughout the week, they would look outside late at night, and the door to the shed would be open. One time when Logan went outside to close the door, he heard something move in the shed, so he went inside to check out what the noise was. When he was inside, he couldn't find anything that could have possibly made the noise, but he said he felt uncomfortable and cold, so he quickly went to leave, and just as he did, 4 truck tires that were sitting on a shelf fell right on top of where he had just been standing. Yes, this could have been a coincidence. But it felt like it wasn't, especially since the doll was also sitting on that shelf. After my mother broke up with Logan, she moved into an apartment and she put the doll in a closet. She's told me that nothing has really happened since, but when she's alone, she hears footsteps and knocks. The last few nights she's been waking up around 3 a.m. hearing noises in her room, but can never see or find anything. I'll be visiting her in January, and will be bringing the doll back home with me when I leave. At my dad's house, I had this red-headed porcelain Victorian type of china doll with a green velvet dress. I was there for a couple of weeks, as opposed to a couple of days, which was usually the case, because I was like 11, so I had no job, and it was summer. This doll was always on the far end of my dresser, facing away from my bed. My room was set up with my headboard against the wall with the window, and the dresser was really long and ran along the same window wall. I honestly never really liked the doll. It always felt like it was angry. I don't even remember when I got it. I want to say it was from my stepmom's mom, Or maybe from a garage sale? Both are likely since my stepmom's mom is Dutch and has a huge collection of weird baby dolls. None of them China though. But my stepmom also is a huge lover of all things garage sale. Like I said, I was there for a few days, this time a couple weeks. It didn't really bother me. The only thing that freaked me the hell out was a Furby that spoke without batteries. But then, all the weird stuff started. I've always slept with my door shut, and if there's an option, locked. I used to have nightmares about witches coming into my room, casting a spell on me, then leaving without me ever knowing. So if I didn't have the option of a lock, I would put something behind the door so that I would know if it was opened as I slept. Unfortunately, I did have a lock on my door, but I wasn't allowed to use it, so I always just put a couple socks behind the door. One morning I woke up, and the doll was turned toward me instead of away. I thought nothing of it, figuring that I had probably just bumped it, especially since the socks weren't moved. Again the next morning, it was a couple inches closer to my bed. I have always been a believer in the supernatural, so I was trying really hard not to get scared, especially since I'd had this doll for a while, and it had never done anything sketchy. The next morning, it was almost falling off the edge of the dresser, it was so close to me. I checked the socks. They hadn't been moved, so no one had come into my room. I threw her into a pile of clothes face down in my closet. The next morning I checked the socks. Again, they hadn't moved, but when I checked the doll, she was facing up. Needless to say, it creeped me right the hell out. So, being the lovely older sister that I was, I gave it to my little sister, who would have been about 4 at the time. The next day, she brought it back to me saying, "I don't like it, it's angry," or something along those lines. I sat with this doll on my bed for a while thinking, what do I do? I've got this doll that probably wants to murder me, but I can't throw it out because it's good quality and my parents are huge skeptics, and I finally decided that if it's angry, maybe it was because nobody was nice to it. So, I took a Barbie brush and started brushing out all of her knots and frizz and tried to get some of the ringlets back to her hair. I cleaned the dirt off of her face, I straightened her dress, all that. I put her on my dresser afterward, and for 6 years nothing happened until, on one of the weekends when I was at my dad's, my sister asked if she could have it because it was pretty, quote-unquote. I guess she forgot the one time she did have it. I got a call a few days later from my dad, letting me know that my sister had thrown my doll out of her second-floor window and broke it. The next time I was there, I asked her why, and she told me that every time she woke up, that the doll was somewhere different from where it was when she had gone to bed. So I've been watching Bad Mood Rude, and she posted the sellers where she gets her haunted dolls from. I decided to get one for myself, and her name is Sandy. Some info about Sandy. Her husband was in the mob. She had alcohol and drug issues. She's nice and loves music. She also has PTSD. I've had Sandy for 3 days now, and I've already had some experiences with her. My first experience was her giving me one of her PTSD episodes. I think she was trying to show me how it feels for her. But how it started was my left arm got cold, and then it started getting pins and needles. My heart started racing, so I sat up in bed and started taking deep breaths, and I said to Sandy, "Wow, Sandy, that's intense, you're really strong." As in, her energy is really powerful, and from my right side, I heard a faint, echoey voice say, "Oh, I'm sorry." And eventually it stopped, and I heard her crying, because I think she was scared. I told her that she was okay, and to come and sit in bed with me, and crying stopped. To add, Sandy used to have fights with her husband a lot, and when this happened, my roommates, they're a couple, were having a fight. I heard them going back and forth through the vent. On the second day, I was in bed with my boyfriend beside me watching TikTok. I hear outside our door what sounds like heels walking on some sort of hard flooring. Note, we don't have anyone in the house who wears heels, and we have like plastic thin flooring. Hopefully someone knows what I mean. It went on for a bit, then no walking, and it starts again. I tell my boyfriend, "Hey babe, do you hear that sound?" Ironically, our other roommate in the room beside us walks out to go to the washroom at the same time as I heard the heels tapping, so my boyfriend thought I was just crazy and said that it was our roommate, even though he's a dude and very much doesn't wear heels. Today I did a spirit box, and Sandy came through giving me clear answers and in full sentences, and she likes living with me apparently, so I'm happy with that. Sandy is really great, and I love having her here. She always seems to show me her presence, but not my boyfriend, who's a huge non-believer in ghosts. And I really think she likes me because I want to help her with her PTSD, and instead of freaking out about the PTSD episode, I handled it and tried my best to get her to calm down. Every time I get up, I feel her following me, and it's like she's watching over me, protective basically. She had kids while she was alive. I really love having her in my home, and she's not scary at all. I know a lot of people are going to say negative stuff on this post like, why would you invite a spirit into your home on purpose, and, oh, all spirits are negative. And to that I say, well, I like the paranormal, and Sandy is not negative. If she was, I would feel it. I would feel fear when she shows her presence, and she would be trying to hurt me. But she doesn't want to hurt me. Very clearly, she just wants to be understood and be known that she is there. She's honestly so sweet and motherly. She's just got some issues like any living person does, because she was living once too. I'm not a superstitious person, and I know that not all spirits are bad, and this is a PSA for everyone. Not all spirits are bad, but a lot of people like to assume that they are, and I don't like that at all. People like to only notice the bad ones and ignore the good spirits. Personally, I look at all spirits as good, but sometimes troubled. I was going to my sister's graduation in Binghamton University, and my family rented out a quote-unquote well-priced Airbnb for 2 nights. The only one that had 5 bedrooms, because extended Chinese family. It was a Victorian-era house, completely decked out with Victorian American aesthetics. It had trinkets, paintings of serious children, photos of even more serious people. It had ornate floral wallpaper, and dolls. Many dolls. We were picking out bedrooms, and no one in my family wanted the room with the creepy dolls. I'm not superstitious, and I didn't see the room, and I didn't understand the gravity of the situation, so I was like, sure, I'll take the room with the dolls. You see where this is going. As midnight approached, I got tired, even after being energized by a tiny bite of baklava and an espresso, so I was the first to go to bed. I went into the room and saw the dolls. They were locked inside a glass case, all facing the bed. I was like, okay, don't be silly. Also, you're a brave trans girl, and they're probably more afraid of you than you are of them. Because you're something they've likely never encountered before. Silly thoughts. I decided to take out my pocket knife and sleep with it at the nightstand, so that I would have some protection. I watched YouTube for a while, and turned off the lamp, and went under the covers. I felt the dolls staring, but my rational side told me it's all in my head. By 3 a.m., I was half-conscious. I was slipping in and out of pure unconsciousness. While I was in a dreamlike state, I was aware of everything going on around me. The dolls just kept staring. Were they next to me? I was afraid to open my eyes. I blinked and I thought, it's okay, I have protection. I didn't dare look at the knife on the nightstand. I was afraid that I would see a doll next to me. Then I remembered, statistically, armed victims of assault tend to have their weapons taken away and used against them, and I thought, oh my god, I am going to be stabbed to death. Then I heard vividly, in a playful, childlike voice, it would be my heart's desire. I immediately became alert. It was like R2-D2 rebooting after being in low power mode. Adrenaline rushed through me. I heard a ringing in my ear as my awareness went from 0 to 60 in a split second. I stayed like that until the sun started to rise at around 5 a.m. That was when I fell back asleep. When I woke up, I dreaded having to sleep there again for yet another night. That night I thought, you know what? Violence begets violence. So I slept with my pocket knife in my bag instead. I fell asleep and slept peacefully through the night. I've always loved the paranormal. Even as a little girl, I found it fascinating. I've had a few encounters in the past, and my house is also haunted. But on to the first paranormal experience that I ever had. I was watching the 1994 version of Little Women with my mom and grandmother in my room when I saw movement out of the corner of my eye on my bookshelf where my dolls were. The air was off, but I could see that one of the doll's dresses was billowing around her, and one of my other dolls was reaching out to her. I brushed it off, as my mind playing tricks. I should mention that my mom rearranged them that day and had them all facing the same direction. Skip to the next day. I had walked out of my room because my grandmother had called me to ask me something, and I walked back in, and all my dolls were turned in different directions and facing different ways. I ran out of my room screaming. My mom didn't believe me until I showed her. She fixed them again. My room had always been off, and I had obtained more dolls from a family friend a few years later, and this is when things really got weird. I have 2 musical dolls, and they would go off randomly sometimes. I started to feel like I was watched, and I wasn't alone. But I just brushed it off as paranoia, because I had never experienced anything major other than some of my dolls appearing to move every once in a while. Skip again to college. After years of dealing with minimal doll movement, something changed. I was in my room one night, and I felt something breathe down my neck, and it scared me so much that I didn't sleep in my room that night. My parents divorced when I was 15, and my dad was dating this girl who loved the paranormal and was also a medium. I asked her when she came over to check out and cleanse my room. The moment she stepped in there, she looked at me and asked if there was a doll in my closet. My heart sank because a family friend had given me a porcelain baby doll that was practically life-size, but it had no eyes. That was the one in my closet, and she confirmed that it was the one that she was getting negative vibes from. She prayed over my room, saged it, and I still have the rose quartz in my room that she gave me. I got rid of the majority of my dolls, and I don't feel anything in there anymore. This is just one of many experiences I've had and thought I would share. I still constantly check my bookshelf just to make sure, and it's been almost 2 years since I got rid of my haunted dolls. But I don't think I'll ever forget. I live in an old house that was made during the 70s. When I moved in, everything was fine, until last week. Last week I was home chilling on my bed reading a book when I heard a noise from the room next to mine. This room is where I keep old possessions from my grandma in the closet. There was one that always crept me out. Some old doll. The noise sounded like a bang, like a closet door being slammed. I went into the room to check and found the closet door wide open with stuff all over the floor. That doll was sitting there. It was sitting there looking at me. I am so freaking terrified right now.